Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Reviews Without Remorse. We are very low tar. My name is David, and I'm telling you that a computer can't do any of that! And the man who is on the verge of suffering the same aneurysm I was having during Batman Forever, Joe. This is episode 89, and in this show we will discuss... We say goodbye to a known, yet unknown actor. Al Matthews passed away, and I sadly only found out when getting notes for today's review. Well, that was fast. Lucasfilm confirms the James Mangold Boba Fett movie is no more. And then, will third time be the charm for our Man of Steel? Stay tuned for our review of Superman 3! Hello, sir. How's Alabama?
Alabama, otherwise known as Smallville, is, it's fine. Nothing too exciting, and I'm tired from work, so once again, thank you for donning the host duties.
It is my pleasure, sir, as always. I just find it hysterical that you basically went to Houston and then to the equivalent of Smallville, while we're doing Superman reviews, Yeah.
Nice parallels.
All right, sweethearts, what are you waiting for? Breakfast in bed? Another glorious day in the Corps. Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
Man, this floor is freezing.
What do you want me to do, fetch your slippers for you?
Gee, would you, sir? I'd like that.
Look into my eye. Fall in, people. Come on, let's go.
Al Matthews was born November 21st, 1942. He is not a very well-known name. He was in a couple of TV shows. He special guest star. The man had a very deep and distinct-sounding voice. The reason I am bringing this man up is because he died on September the 22nd, 2018. We completely missed it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the importance of the character. Now, he's been in James Bond. He was in Tomorrow Never Dies as a Master Sergeant, because basically that's what he became known for. He was in Superman 3, which we're about to review, as the fire chief at the chemical plant. But he is the man who brought to life and gave us the, let me backstep a second. The first, quote-unquote, stereotypical Army sergeant was played by Louis Gossett Jr. in the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. Now, that was a very serious role, so that was like the first taste of it. Now, you and I have agreed already that Arlie Emery became the definitive serious, drill sergeant from movies. But after Louis Gossett Jr. and before Arlie Emery, Al Matthews played the part of Sergeant Apone, Al Apone, in the James Cameron directed Aliens movie. Mm-hmm. The influence that this character had, not only on the way movies portray the action sergeant, so on and so forth, but was a huge influence in video games. The game Halo is a direct influence by Aliens, and included a very similar character based on that. He walked around with swagger. He walked around with confidence, and you heard the quote that I put at the beginning, that every meal is a feast and everything like that. The man just had amazing charm. He's not the greatest actor in the world or anything like that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not even trying to say that. He was somebody that I will always remember from the movie Aliens. Behind the wonderful Bill Paxton's Game Over, Man, Game Over, and so on and so forth, but he was still there. He was playing a caricature that I took seriously, and that's an incredible talent to have. So I'm sorry that we missed you, Mr. Matthews. I'm sorry we didn't get you back on the 22nd of September to give you a proper send-off, but here we are now. Thank you for creating an icon.
My friend, well said. I got nothing more to add. You summed it up perfectly.
Okay, so remember how we talked about that they're going to learn the wrong lesson with the Solo debacle? I kind of feel like the canceling of the Boba Fett movie is learning that wrong lesson.
I'm with you 100% there. Go on, my friend.
So it was reported, it was first reported as a rumor, but it got picked up, it got, dragged out, and it seems that the excitement over the Mandalorian TV series that Jon Favreau is doing has effectively killed James Mangold's Boba Fett movie. Now, it seems that some details are starting to come out, and the idea was that it was a story that was going to take place leading up to and through Empire Strikes Back. It seems the way Mangold was looking to do it was literally the fight between the bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back into trying to get to Solo first. I would have wanted to see that!
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird thing, because, when I first heard that they were doing The Mandalorian, I kind of forgot that Mangold was already sort of helming that. So when I heard Mandalorian, I was sort of thinking in the back of my mind that I guess the Boba Fett thing had kind of morphed into this, because it did sort of strike me as a little odd that you would have a Mandalorian TV show and a Boba Fett movie at the same time. It's almost like you're sort of doing the same character two different ways, sort of. So yeah, that's kind of weird. And I'm wondering now, are we seeing kind of a shift? Is it getting to where it's more lucrative to do a series than to do just a standalone movie?
That is actually a very good question. There's a lot of gambling when it comes to movies, but there's almost as much gambling with TV shows. However, there has been tremendous success with TV, both financially, critically. Why not take the chance? And Disney's service is going to need as much original content as humanly possible in order to keep going. So, yeah, they're going to look for something original. Favreau, we know we believe in Favreau. We know he's got the chops and the talent. I'm not 100% sure what the Mandalorian is actually going to be about, but the fact that he's running it and the character looks pretty cool, I'm kind of on board with it.
Well, the character looks cool because he looks like Boba Fett, honestly. I kind of think... there's a part of me that's kind of... Yeah, I don't know. It just seems so weird to me. Again, you take a movie that could potentially earn you $1 billion, and you shift that over to doing a series with an unnamed, an unnamed Mandalorian character, like not specifically Boba Fett, just some character that you can morph however you want, I suppose, and you do a series with it. I don't know. We'll put it this way. Nothing Lucasfilm does to me strikes me as being very logical. I don't know what they're doing over there. So here I am trying to figure out, what do they know that I don't know? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's nothing. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange thing. I don't quite get what they're doing over there.
I have a suspicion. The one thing a television show is good for is long form. You get constant hype if the things go well, as opposed to anything else, and merchandising. Stranger Things is a huge success for Netflix, and I'm here to tell you the merchandising for Stranger Things is through the damn roof. The fans are the biggest advertisement for the show that it is. This is the kind of thing you want to hope for and look for. And with Disney parks and everything like that, you basically have a destination. Because now, they're building that Star Wars theme park at Disney that's going to be opening next year, right?
Yeah. Right, no surprise.
the more variety of merchandise you have on the shelf, the more hype you generate for a product, et cetera, and so forth. I'm telling you, I know that's just a cynical way of looking at it, but it's really what I feel it is. You know, to Favreau, I want to make a show that's going to be entertaining and interesting and exciting and so on and so forth. To Disney, we now have a long-form show that can basically print money for us, whereas a movie is a gamble.
Yeah, but everything you're saying it's true. But again, most of what you just said can easily be applied to a movie as well as a series. In fact, possibly more so, with the exception of what you said, long-form storytelling. But as far as merchandising goes, I mean, all of that has traditionally been done through the success of film franchises. I mean, I suppose maybe it's less risky because it's less expensive to do a series because you're not going for the blockbuster effects, and also if it's successful, you just have to greenlight the next season as opposed to, you know, gathering everybody together again to make another movie. Or I don't know. Maybe it's a little simpler. I don't know. I really can't figure out what the advantage is to shift from doing a standalone Boba Fett movie where you have a character that you already know is beloved by fans. I mean, he is an already established character, and he's vague enough that you could do a lot with him, as opposed to doing something like Solo, where that character is carved in stone, and you need to sort of replicate that character when you do a film. I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of stumped. I'm really stumped, and I don't see why they would do this unless it's less expensive to create, because I don't see the advantage. I don't see the payback afterwards. Like I said, one successful film can bang you out $1 billion in its first run. It's not all the time, but it's possible. A series, how much can you really get from a series? How long does it take to generate the revenue from doing a series? Especially if Disney is putting it on its own streaming service. Are you really expecting $1 billion worth of subscribers because of The Mandalorian? I don't know.
I the only other thing I could think of is that they're trying to use it to drive up numbers for subscription when the time comes, because there's no other place to see a show about a Boba Fett-like character. That's the other cynical side of it.
Well, yeah, that's true. And, you know, the other thing I'm probably leaving out, I mean, you could also make the argument that Marvel is doing something very similar in its Loki series, its Scarlet Witch series. I mean, I could be sitting here saying, why not make a Scarlet Witch movie? I guess if they're really trying to go down this route of exploring the streaming service venue, you need stuff on it. You need to put shows on. So maybe that's the thought. Maybe look, instead of taking the risk on doing Boba Fett, let's do it as a series and get people to watch. I guess that's all I can think of, really.
Again, it's sad that we lost, because I think James Mangold might have done a very exciting Boba Fett movie, but, you know, let's kind of hope that Favreau knows what the hell he's doing and gives us something compelling. Maybe it reignite the love of Star Wars that you and I have lost.
Let's hope. And if anybody can do it, he can.
When it's time for adventure, it's time for Superman. Alexander Salkind presents Christopher Reeve and Richard Pryor in Superman 3. This time, Richard Pryor has come to Metropolis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he's got something to sell. He's the best con man and the world's greatest computer genius.
Let me tell you something.
The Man of Steel faces his greatest challenge yet. Pedestrian writing, slapstick directing, and for the first time ever, an unfunny Richard Pryor. Written by David Newman and Leslie Newman, based on characters created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who are probably spinning in their graves. Directed by Richard Lester. Superman 3.
Why do I have a feeling you did not get that synopsis off of IMDb?
You, sir, are 100% correct, because IMDb had synthetic kryptonite laced with tar splits Superman in two, good Clark Kent and bad Man of Steel. It was terrible. And I was like,
wow.
I kept looking and I kept looking. It's like, come on, somebody's got to have a decent synopsis. But you know what's funny? In a weird way, it's completely symbolic of this movie. This is not a movie you can, like, compartmentalize in any rational way.
Yeah.
It's such a strange movie that I can't wrap my head around what I saw or what I suffered through again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Superman 3. I'll start out on a positive note.
There's a positive note?
Well, you know how I kind of always say that I appreciate when a movie kind of at least lets you know up front what you're in for. You know, as opposed to shifting tones halfway through. Well, boy, does this one let you know right up front exactly what you're in for. First of all, it opens up with Gus Gorman, a Superman movie that usually opens up with epic titles and a massive action scene. No, we open up to Gus Gorman, Richard Pryor, standing on the unemployment line, talking to a very unpleasant lady behind the window about how he can't get his unemployment anymore. Yeah, there's a way to pull in your audience and let them know that something great is about to happen. Hold on to your seats, folks. This is Superman 3. And then we segue over to Metropolis for... what exactly would you call this? The comedy stylings of Richard Lester.
I would call it an extremely feeble attempt at some kind of Rube Goldberg style of comedy.
Complete with mimes and pies in the face and yeah, this is something else, boy.
And those little flare bomb things that they haven't used since like the 40s that sets the little mechanical penguin on fire.
Right, the little toy penguins that are walking around and a blind man grabbing a hold. Boy, that's probably something you wouldn't see today. That's not very very sensitive. The blind guy loses his dog and grabs the thing and painting lines in the street because he's blind. Like it's like an episode of Mr. Magoo, basically.
Yeah. You done it again, Superman.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny you should mention that, because every time I think of this movie, I think of the first time we talked about this. We talked long ago. The first time we spoke about this, the way you talked about the opening was how you sat down and the opening starts happening, and the first thing that popped into your head was, uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, how could you not? How could you possibly not? You watch this and this is, I don't know if it was with you, but I've sort of made the comparison before about, when I was sort of ripping apart Spectre and I was sort of going over the Daniel Craig films, and might be a stretch to make this point. I kind of said that if you split Casino Royale into two parts, almost like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins, where it splits unevenly. And I said if you took the gritty action part, you get Quantum of Solace, but then if you get that kind of the leftover remnants of James Bond without the gritties, you sort of got Spectre.
Yeah.
The Superman 2 is kind of like that in a way, because if you look at the final product, the product that was, hodgepodge back together by Richard Lester and crew, if you strip away all the goodness that was the Richard Donner Superman 2, and you left the silly nonsense slapstick stuff that Richard Lester had added in, if you just took that part, that's the opening of Superman 3. Just all that silly nonsense that Lester felt compelled to put in there is this in all its glory. So it basically, like, if Richard Lester and who, if they were hired to make the original Superman, this is what it would look like.
Oh, I don't want to go to the parallel universe where that is. that place is a scary place, I imagine.
Oh my God.
It's the setting up of the tone was bad enough. The entire thing, the reason why it happens, the guy who, and nobody can really explain this to me. He runs over a fire hydrant, and it fills his car with water. What?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know what I love about that is that all starts because there's a bank robbery, right? There's a bank robbery and gunshots firing. Superman doesn't notice or care about that. But once that somehow segues and causes the guy to crash his car onto the fire hydrant, then suddenly it's like, oh, hey, we got a problem over here.
It is a 5-minute sequence of nothing. It brings nothing to the table. It adds nothing to the story. Here's Superman, he saves people. We knew this already. We're seeing Superman 3. We've seen him do it twice before. There's no reason to establish that. The only reason this scene here is to lower the audience's expectations and be like, this isn't Mr. Donner's Superman.
Yeah, I mean, right. This whole opening shot, like I said, I mean, at least it's honest and tells you that this is pretty much what this is. It's nothing of substance, as fluff as this is the very definition of just fluff nonsense. I mean, like I said, when you start off your movie with a pie in the face, you are not setting your audience up for anything of any sort of substance or nothing of any genuine wit. It's just terrible. So yeah, the rescue of the guy from the car, that's as meager of a Superman rescue as I can think of, quite frankly.
Oh yeah. Well, then the rest of the movie is just a series of and thens, and then yeah. Gus learns how to program a computer, and then Gus does the thing with the pennies and gets a $86,000 paycheck, and then they decide to use him to hack a satellite that can control the weather. What?
Right, yeah, because that's what rather satellites do.
Yeah, absolutely. You could easily change that because they have lasers and crap and stuff, whatever. And then this happens, and then that happens, and then we got to take out Superman, and then we scan for kryptonite, and then it's an unknown portion, and then he throws the phony thing on, and then he becomes evil, and then so pedantic, so like I almost feel. A part of me wants to feel bad for Newman, for the Newmans, for David and Leslie Newman, because I kind of feel like, hey, you know what? They wrote the first two Supermen, and they did pretty good there. I kind of feel like they had some weird contractual obligation that forced them to write this one, because if you notice, there's no story by Mario Puzo anywhere in this.
Right. Yeah, those days are long gone. I don't know. Well, I suppose... Again, this is really, I guess, just mandates from the executives at this point. The Salkinds, who, again, I don't really think they ever had any passion for Superman. I think this was always just sort of a, let's get the rights to that and crank out a movie. And sort of by accident, they struck gold when they hired Richard Donner to actually do it for them. And again, despite their best efforts to thwart him, he managed to get his movie done, and it's spectacular. So they managed to muck up Superman 2, and then they were free to do the schlock that they always wanted to do from the beginning, and that is Superman 3. And again, talk about the strangest decision making. Somebody catches Richard Donner on the Johnny Carson show, right after he saw Superman for the first time. And I guess he was kind of doing this shtick where he's telling Johnny, "Oh my God, I saw Superman, and he went like woo, and he flew, and Superman, boom, yay!" And he was doing this whole routine about how great Superman was. Well, they see this, and they go, "We need to put him in a Superman movie," and kind of make him basically the star of the movie. He essentially nudges out Superman, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. For all practical purposes, if he's not the protagonist of this film, I genuinely don't know who is.
He really looked like I shouldn't be here. There was like no moment that Richard Pryor felt like Richard Pryor throughout this entire movie.
Yeah. You know, I think it's kind of... Right. He had no business being in this movie at all. I mean, he is in a... I mean, again, there's a lot of sequels that will do sort of stunt casting and throw in somebody who is, notable, famous, whatever. Richard Pryor, again, this is a guy whose sense of humor is not... He's an R-rated comic. His whole demeanor is not really suitable for this kind of film. I don't see why he is in any way, shape, or form connected with this film. Why you would put him in a Superman film, other than the fact that he made you giggle one night talking about Superman. I mean, if anything, it's almost like that shows you why he should not be in it, because I don't know what's the word. Like, it's hard to explain what I'm talking about. But again, he talked about it from afar, and he talked about how much he loved it and how great it was. That doesn't mean you should star in the next movie. It's almost like the one part where they show them on the rooftop after the whole debacle. I guess they tried to ruin the crops over in Colombia, and of course he's describing that Superman came in and did this and did that, as if he was there watching it, but he really wasn't. I mean, I don't know. Whatever. That little sticky part where he's like, oh, Superman did this, and then he flew up, and then... I mean, that was sort of what they brought him in to do, basically. But then he has to fill out the rest of the movie with just Richard Pryor antics. And most of it doesn't make any sense. Like they're struggling to find ways to have him... it's almost like when you would watch, like, like every Robin Williams movie, like, no matter what the tone of the film is, they always got to throw in sort of one scene where he kind of just does his shtick, and he's just doing characters and stuff, no matter what the movie is. It could be Mrs. Doubtfire, or it could be Dead Poet Society. They still try to jam in him doing voices and doing shtick and making people laugh, because, like, there's some executive somewhere going... You put Robert Williams in here and you didn't let him do his thing? So, as he always had that obligatory scene that was always annoying because it sort of took you out of the movie for a minute. Well, that's the whole thing of Richard Pryor here. They have him...
Yeah, and not utilized in any way well.
Yeah. Like when they have him dressed up as an army colonel or whatever he's supposed to be to present Superman with the kryptonite and do this big shtick. You couldn't figure out any other... I mean, come on. Like, right, that is obviously there to watch him just talk about... And even the whole speech he's giving is barely coherent. It doesn't really make any sense as with regard to what they're actually doing. He does the other scene where he has to break into... He goes all the way down to Smallville. Yeah, okay. To use a computer there, coincidentally, where he runs into... Brad, and they drink together, but he has to come in with the big cowboy hat doing the cowboy voice, which he only keeps going until he actually gets in the door, and then he just talks like Richard Pryor again. Like stuff like that, it was just so dumb. It was so painful. I was like, why is this here? This is so retarded. But then again, this is what they were basing their whole movie on.
Yeah, I don't necessarily blame Richard Pryor for this. This was a payday for him. And he's done much better things than this. I don't know what the thinking was with this. I have a suspicion, and I'm gonna run this by you real quick. And I hate to get off the the Gus bashing phase of the movie, but there's a lot we could say about it. I have a theory. My theory is the reason why we still have Newman and the Newmans' names as the script writers. I would venture a guess that the original plot of this story was Brainiac and Bizarro.
Yeah, I've heard that they tossed
Watching
around.
It this time around.
Good.
Go ahead.
I've heard rumors. I've heard various behind the scenes thing. Not recently, but I did hear that they were thinking about going in much different directions. And I almost wondered if the filmmakers got cold feet and just said, you know what. I don't read these comics. I don't know anything about that stuff. Why don't we just do another Lex Luthor, please? It's so much easier.
No, but you can't replace Lex Luthor. Look, I like Robert Vaughn. I think Robert Vaughn is fine. I think he could be both a serious actor and he has that dry delivery that can make him kind of amusing. I love him. I don't have a problem with him. He's no frickin' Lex Luthor. This Ross Webster character is useless.
Right. He's got an incredibly unenviable task of trying to be the new Lex Luthor, and it doesn't work.
Which he does a fine job with, but, with what he's got. But my point is that I really feel like that they were originally going to go with Brainiac, and that in the process of Brainiac trying to find a weakness in Superman, accidentally creates Bizarro and feels that's a better thing. Just the entire sequence where Clark is split off and he's gone dark side felt extremely Bizarro to me.
Now that's an interesting take. Yeah, okay. I didn't see fully where you were going with that, but now that you say that, yeah, I like your theory.
Yeah, I feel like I would bet that the original idea was you had Lex Luthor, he's trying to figure out something, and along comes Brainiac somehow, and the Brainiac does this, the Brainiac does that, because you had that whole sequence at the end where the sister Vera, I believe her name was, gets consumed and becomes a robot and stuff like that.
Nightmare-inducing scene. I specifically remember waking up from a nightmare when I was younger. I knew it was because of that movie. It was totally from that scene.
It was, for all of Lester's shortcomings, I felt that was a particularly effective and creepily done scene. I'm going to give him credit for that scene. Because that was
effective. Yeah, but it's creepy. Yeah, it is bizarre.
But the fact that magic machine was able to do as much as it was, and then to turn a woman into a robot and stuff like that, it just made me feel that's very Brainiac.
Yeah.
Somebody was thinking Brainiac when they came up with that idea.
Yeah.
And the entire junkyard fight sequence just also screamed at me, this is the Bizarro versus Superman fight I've been dreaming of.
Yeah. I can totally see that. That makes perfect sense.
I feel like if they had stuck with that particular direction, we might have gotten a better movie. But honestly, do you remember a TV show on HBO many years ago called Not Necessarily the News?
Sure.
Okay. When this, in 1983, that season of 1983, they did like a little quote-unquote skit. It was a black and white skit, and it was, coming soon to theaters. And it's, somebody in the shower curtain pulls aside, and there's Norman Bates with the knife, and in the shower is Superman. And coming soon, Psycho 2, Superman 3, kind of like giving score.
Uh-huh.
And then, just before it fades to black, as you see Superman and Norman Bates struggling, there's the little tagline of, with Richard Pryor to appeal to the black audience.
Yeah. Right, okay.
That is the only, no offense to the late, great Richard Pryor, but that is the only reason why he's here. Yeah. He's here because, we want the comedy and we want to appeal to a whole new audience, throw Richard Pryor in there. It's cynical.
That's probably, well, yeah, well, I don't know. Richard Pryor was a guy who appealed to everyone, I think. You could have a very good point, and the logic might be as intelligent as putting Samuel L. Jackson in Star Wars just to appeal to the urban market, which, again, the urban market doesn't go running to see Star Wars. They don't care about your movies, guys. But you're right that it's not, this is not an attempt to pick on Richard Pryor by any stretch, because honestly, and I actually do like him in certain PG roles, frankly, and the one I kind of think of is The Toy.
My God, that movie is awesome.
Right, it's great. He's great in that. I thought that is that movie, I think, really does kind of let his charm shine through. And, like I said, and it's a very PG movie. So it's not like, so he can do things like that. It's not that he's without any charm or anything in this film. It's just not the right venue for him. To have him bounce off people like Ross Webster and The Ugly Sister and it doesn't really, it's almost like you said, he's sitting there going like, what am I doing here? It doesn't feel right. There's no sense of cohesiveness with that cast. It just seems like he's there to do his shtick, and everyone will just try to work around that and do, again, like the Ross Webster plans and all this other stuff, the big schemes. Again, he's just trying to work around Richard Pryor, and just you're sort of trying to look past him to see what's going on. So yeah, none of it really works in that respect.
Yeah, there is a tremendous amount of things that simple things they could have done, that would have been helpful. For example, this annoys the ever-living hell out of me. Okay, he helps them make kryptonite, the very element that is well known can kill Superman. When he presents it to him in that over-the-top little general way, he's got this little snigger on his face like, I got you, Superman.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And literally 40 minutes later, without any rhyme or reason, when Ross tells him you're the man who's going to kill Superman, he's got this, no. It's like, what,
yeah.
What arc did you go through to suddenly decide you don't want to kill Superman? Where did that change?
Yeah. Right, and just a little bit of better storytelling would have fixed that problem. Yeah, but you're right. The fact that they got him, they just trot him out. You're the general now, and you're trying to kill Superman, and it's going to fail, and you're going to be upset. Okay, yeah. and then later on, suddenly he's the good guy again. No, it doesn't work. And it's interesting to me how Superman kind of does the turnaround quickly too. He says the four of you. I'm not with them, Superman. And I guess yeah, he does try to save him. He takes the axe to the machine to try to stop it. Mm-hmm. So I guess, but again, like the fact that they do the bro handshake, I think.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
On.
And he does the shake hands, which turns into the like. Oh boy. I mean, that's just kind of, I know it's a different era, but boy, that's like you said, it's pandering.
It's pandering and it rings false. It wasn't an earned character arc. They could have come up with a decent arc for the change of heart and Gus, and they could have. They didn't. Because they didn't care. They just wanted it to be. There was a couple of elements in this movie that, on paper, I was thinking, okay, this could be an interesting little take on things, but then they screwed it up. The Lana Lang character is one of my favorite characters.
Yes.
And I don't blame the actress. I love the actress. I think, I love Annette O'Toole, and she has done better work than this before, but they compartmentalized her to like almost one dimension. Always just talking about he needs a man, he needs a man, he needs a man, he needs a man about her son. And it was just getting ridiculous. It's like, are you kidding me with this character? She makes Whitley Scott look well-rounded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right. And I kind of feel like the casting there was spot on. I mean, I think they really cast the perfect actress for that, because I think that her charm, as opposed to the Willie Scott, whose whole presence is just so off-putting. Annette O'Toole is so charming in this. I mean, and even then, I mean, the writing is kind of shticky and like there's a lot of all the little weird miscommunications they have. I don't really get why that is. Like, can we just get a nice, not everything has to have a little punchline in it. I get it. But she is very charming in it, and the whole Clark Kent Lana Lang romance is nice. Incidentally, by the way, we should probably, also explain that because Margot Kidder was so vocal in her distaste for how they treated Richard Donner, that I think when this film came around, they basically said, okay, you're going to come in, wave goodbye, and then we'll see you at the end of the movie for another 5 minutes, not even. So she barely gets a walk-on in this film, and it is so weirdly obvious that they just could not get her out of there fast enough.
It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable.
Yes, honestly. It is. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable, and you sort of feel like it's almost like you feel like you're betraying people by watching this, because Donner got dismissed. You feel like she's getting the shaft in this film. So you're almost, there's a part of me that's like, I mean, again, this is back in the 80s, nothing you can do about it now, but I almost feel like had the internet been what it was back then, you might have had people boycotting this film, the same way you got people boycotting like Solo and stuff. The same backlash that Disney is feeling right now, that could have been what we would have had back then, because the people behind these Superman films were just so unkind to their talent. The people who were making this this franchise what it was. So anyway, so she was unceremoniously removed from this film, so it left the void to give Clark Kent and Lana Lang this kind of Smallville homecoming romance. That I like. I thought that stuff was really good. Again, she was a perfect actress for this. It was nice to see Christopher Reeve get to, play the part a little differently. You got to see more of him, frankly. Again, a side of him. Like again, it's nice because, in Superman 1 and 2, he's got the Superman persona and he's got the Clark Kent persona. Here he can kind of be a little more himself. He doesn't have to be tripping over everything. In fact, I remember even like Christopher Reeve, getting interviewed around this time saying, I kind of felt like, as opposed to having him bump into every doorway, I think at this point he kind of knows where the doors are, So I liked that. There was a little more maturity in sort of how he played the part, and I just sort of really liked the two of them together. That. Again, very wasted and very pushed to the side for most of this, but I will give this film that much, that I thought that worked pretty well.
I asked you to kill Superman, and you're telling me you couldn't even do that one simple thing.
To continue your earlier point about Lois, frankly, a throwaway line of her having transferred to maybe a desk in London. She's going to be out in London for a while. I think would have been better than having her brought in and then summarily kicked off and then summarily brought back in. I felt it was way too awkward. I think adding a simple line of she's off on assignment for a year or two in London or something like that would have been just fine. And you could have taken away a lot of the awkwardness of that.
Yeah, that's true. And not only that, you're absolutely right. It's almost like the fact that they did bring her in, it was almost like they were... here's a pretty piss-poor analogy, but it's kind of like when the dog shits the carpet and you point his nose in it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the fact that they brought her in at the end and bring Lana in to show off the diamond ring that Clark gave her, and Lois has to make that face, that awkward face, I mean, that is awkward and kind of painful, and it's like...
and out of place with what they established.
Yeah, I mean, right. And again, why, like, it's almost like you're saying to yourself, okay, film, why do you want me to feel that way? Why do you want me to feel like Lois Lane is now jilted because she didn't pay enough attention to Clark, and now Lana moved in, and yeah, it's just kind of weird. Like, you don't really get the point of that. And it's not something that's ever resolved later, of course.
No, of course not. Of course not. The other point I want to make from your earlier thing was we talked about with Superman 2 that the klutziness of Clark Kent is supposed to be just part of his character to throw off people that he's, Superman.
Sure.
And they took that to too far of a level in the second one to make it seem like he's just naturally a klutz.
Right.
The scene at the as ridiculous as the scene was, I was really happy about the scene at the bowling alley where he's like, "Whoops! I accidentally hit the ashtray," and then he purposefully looks at the bowling ball, achoo! And I loved that. I'm sorry, it was so small, but I love that. It's like, thank you. It's like he's not really a klutz. He knows exactly what he's doing. And I really, really love that.
Yeah, it's right. It's almost like it's almost like the klutziness is sort of a tool that he can use or fall back on when he needs it. Right. And this kind of illustrates that. Yeah, he needed to do kind of a klutzy maneuver to camouflage the big sneeze. I've always, even when I was younger, I remember walking away from that scene saying to myself, like, did they... It was almost like so obvious that he did that, though. She even turns around and goes, "Gesundheit," like almost like she knew that he had just blown the ball into the pins. Like, it was kind of odd. Like, I wasn't, I wasn't positive. Like, are they supposed to have no idea that he just did that, or are they kind of acknowledging that something just happened? I didn't know.
The after effects of that was terribly played. I was just talking about the build up and the actions that he did.
Right, and your point is perfectly valid. You're absolutely right. The clutching, right? The clutchiness was something that he uses here as a way to accomplish something. I agree.
Yeah. Well, the couple other things we should bring up. Superman got laid.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely right. And he didn't have to go to the Fortress of Solitude and turn off his superpowers. That's weird.
Yeah. That was
Awkward?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little awkward.
I mean, listen, I kind of enjoyed Reeves' idea of a quote-unquote evil Superman. I love the swagger. Like, when he walks as Superman, he doesn't walk with, like, this swagger of, I'm all that in a bag of chips. But when he got the grimier costume and everything like that, I loved his swagger. I did really appreciate how much of subtle differences he tried to put in with the character. He tries. Christopher Reeve really does try with this movie with what he's got.
I agree. He is, quite frankly, I don't think I've ever seen a Superman movie, even when the movie is piss poor, where he is not making an effort. He brings his A game every time. He is a consummate professional. And I think he was, again, this was a time where I think he was getting a little frustrated because he was getting, stereotyped into, this is all he can do because he's so famous for that role, which, again, a lot of actors will go through when they're doing something that iconic. With that in mind, though, he still gives it his all. He still enjoys, you can still tell that he's having fun doing it, and he does his best.
And at some points looks damn intimidating in the part, which I appreciated. It's like, I never would have thought of him as being an intimidating actor until that. So good for him.
Yeah, and and I still, again, keeping in tone with the kind of silliness of this movie, I've always kind of looked back and laughed and said, so this is what evil Superman would do. Look at Batman v Superman. He's like, the fact that he can do all this stuff. He's our enemy, and he can kill us all, and if he wanted to or whatever. Well, then you look at this movie, and goes, oh, so evil Superman would just kind of fly all the way to Italy just to prank some random souvenir shop guy, or he goes to the Olympics to prank the guy who just carried the torch. So maybe he's prankster Superman. I mean, maybe they wanted Mixelplick in this movie too, along with Bizarro.
See, but that's the thing. That's why I feel like this was originally meant to be Bizarro, because that would be a Bizarro thing to do. That tower be falling down. Me fix. Oh
right.
No, that man on fire. Me stop. That's where I'm getting the idea from.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that all was a little weird, but okay.
There's a bunch of other things. I didn't understand the point of the stupid balloons. Why did they need to take the balloons down to the supercomputer? They established earlier that a helicopter could drop shit off. Why the hell didn't they just take the damn helicopter? Because they wanted to establish that they started it before Gus could get down there, because Gus had to take a donkey.
Right. They needed a reason why they can get down there like 10 minutes before he does. Well, that kind of does bring up something too with these movies. We talked last time with Superman 2, like, why would General Zod have the power to point his finger and laser beam a guy up into the sky and just sort of lower him down again?
Yeah.
For no reason. This movie makes it very obvious that the filmmakers knew that they had already kind of mastered the effect of wire work and harnessing people to fly around. So it's like every time something would happen, like they would laser beam somebody to fly them over that way, or laser beam somebody to fly them that way, or use the balloons to lower people down, and like the wire. It was like, it's almost like when you watch the X-Men Origins Wolverine, and you knew it was going to be terrible because they kept finding weird things to do with his claws other than stabbing people in the face with them, which is what they're for. Here, how can we do something to put people on the wires to really maximize our investment in the wire work? So all of the for some reason, everything that they do, everything the computer does would have something to do with flying and levitation or whatever. Even when they grab the ugly sister and pull her back in to turn into the robot, you see the legs come off the ground and she's airborne. So it's like they constantly doing that stuff with this. So it's like, there's your reason why they're on the balloons.
Ridiculous. This whole movie is ridiculous. There was there's a scene in this movie that to me, it happens during the chemical fire. There's chemical fire going on. There's fire. The store blasts open with fire, and the camera's kind of panning around at all destruction and disaster. There's a sound of a person coming out of that room, out of a burning room, and he says, I'm on fire. Help me. That's this movie. That is this movie in a nutshell.
Oh my God. I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, there's a lot of, and it's so funny too because it's such a.
That just
they went to the trouble to set a guy on fire for that one, and the shot is so fast. The camera sort of pans so fast, and the guy just runs out, and he's already off camera. It was sort of odd.
Very odd. It's an entire movie of frustration and oddity because watching it this time, I said to myself, okay, now. Who we're going to ask in a little bit, but what would you have done? This is your movie. What would you have done? And that's why I wanted to present the Bizarro Brainiac theory, because it is the only other thing that makes sense as to where this movie started as opposed to where it wound up. I really feel like that was where they started. Probably the Writers Guild insisted on these people getting the credit since the majority of the plot was still intact. And that's the only reason why their names are attached. And Lester and some hack writer just tore that all apart and piecemealed it back together with Richard Pryor and all this other crap. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't the worst superhero movie of all time, but it's up there.
Yeah. I agree with that.
When it's time for adventure, it's time for Superman. Alexander Salkind presents Christopher Reeve and Richard Pryor in Superman 3. Now, the evil threat is not a mere superhuman. It is a supercomputer.
What will it do for me? It'll do anything you tell me to tell it to do for you.
All right. Let's score this son of a bitch. The movie that I couldn't even come up with good quotes to open the show with. The movie I couldn't even find a decent synopsis for because nobody could figure out a way to synopsis this movie. Hell, we've covered a lot about this movie because we didn't have a lot of news this week, so we really did cover a lot. I still feel like we forgot some stuff.
Yeah. We could easily. Yeah, this is one we could really kind of get into the nooks and crannies of. Because there is just so much kind of weirdness with it.
Yeah, serious weirdness. All right, Joe. So I got trick-or-treaters to be handing out candy to, so let's get this going, man. Superman 3, Richard Lester's magnum opus of Superman movies. Joe, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm tempted just for the sake of being ironic to give Superman 3 a 3. But I think I'm going to give it a 4, and because again, it's I wouldn't even really say it's because again 5 is kind of my watchable, is it worth your time kind of a score. Anything below that, it's just how bad are we talking now? Again, I don't really find it to be unwatchable. I find that I can sit through it, and again, as much as I'm laughing at it more than I'm laughing with it. There is kind of Christopher Reeve is spot on. I do very much enjoy the chemistry between he and Annette O'Toole. I like the idea that they kind of went they try to explore areas and things that we haven't seen before, specifically watching Superman fly over wheat fields as opposed to flying through Metropolis is nice. So there are some charming elements to it. having said that, it's also the film that every time I've seen it, I was just praying that they had not done it or had done something different. It really does. I mean, we kind of throw around the whole missed opportunity. You know, this was a missed opportunity, but this really was. I mean, this was Superman 3. This was their first film after the first two, again, that were meant to be sort of a two-part story, already mucked up by the people behind the scenes who unceremoniously got rid of Richard Donner for wanting to do nothing more than make a masterpiece, which he did. And yeah, they decided to make this weird, schlocky, joke fest, funhouse, this cavalcade of comedy, starring Richard Pryor, co-starring Superman. So yeah, it is a hodgepodge of nonsense. So I as much as I do find a few charming elements about it, there really is not much more I can say than that. So I'll stick with my 4.
This movie is basically a Halloween bag after you're done trick-or-treating. You're never really sure exactly what you're going to get, and every once in a while you find that exact piece of chocolate you're looking for, but most of the time you wind up with coconut crap and stuff you don't even want. And that's what this movie really is. There are elements there that you're curious about. Like, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I would have liked to have seen more of Lana Lang when she wasn't whining about not having a man. That would have been nice. Mm-hmm. The Laura Lee character, I mean, she. Wait. Pretty lady, terrible voice, but they had that one. Excuse me. Beautiful lady, terrible voice. They had this one moment in the movie where she's reading like this really deep philosophical book, and she's and she questions some of the philosophical implications. You know, like showing off that this is actually an intelligent woman. Yeah. And then she goes back to her, "Hi, honey." I was like, "Wow, you know what? I want to know the story behind that. I part of me wants to know the story behind that." But you know,
I think you're being a little generous there, because I kind of felt like it was almost like somebody after the fact saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if she was actually really smart?" Or maybe even the actress who was kind of rolling over having to do this crap said, "Can we throw in something where she's actually secretly smart or something like that?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So I kind of thought that was an afterthought. And
afterthought or not, my point being is that if you're going to throw an element out like that, you know, explore it a little bit, for God's sakes. Don't just use it as a punchline. It demeans the character, and it demeans the intelligence of the audience, as far as I'm concerned. This movie I gave a 4 as well. There is really not a lot of good candy in this Halloween bag. There's a couple of elements. You know, I liked, for example, there's this really nice shot during the chemical fire where Superman gets into the back of the police car, and then he comes out the other side, and the shot is very well done and static, and you can see like the fire burning in the reflection of the car and stuff like that, and it's literally like one quick take. I like that. I thought that the frozen river over the fire was extremely clever in Superman. And then I have my For Your Consideration, which I'll get to in a minute. There are nice elements like that. I wish there was more with Lana Lang. I wish that there was some kind of, cohesion in this plot. I wish that, for whatever reason, I love Richard Pryor, but I really wish he wasn't here. I really, really wish he wasn't here. I wish it was somebody else, anybody else. Because they put too much of the focus on that character, and it detracted from everything else, simply because that you remove the Gus Gorman character from this movie. Yeah, the movie still doesn't make a lot of sense, but you instantly get an improvement because there's too much focus on him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, like I said, the fact that they wedge him in there, he's sort of he's kind of inadvertently become the protagonist of the film, as opposed to Superman being the protagonist or the people around him. Again, we got rid of Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. We barely see Perry White. So now we have, again, Gus Gorman kind of being the lead, really, as opposed to, and again, the villains should have been Ross Webster and his team of cronies around him. Again, it's sort of like Lex Luthor, Otis, and Miss Taskmaster all over again. This trio. So yeah, it's really, again, it's really weird. It's one of those things where, I mean, it's almost like the Phantom Menace problem, where you sort of look at it and say, who is the lead character in this? It's just a whole hodgepodge of people all doing different things, and because of the way this kind of falls, it kind of by accident becomes Richard Pryor.
Yeah. All right, Bub. Who asked you?
Who asked me, boy? I really kind of struggled to think of one single solitary thing, but at the end of the day, it's just Richard Lester. This guy is just a clown. The guy, I mean, he's a guy who, and you know what? Maybe I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't say that because, I mean, the film, it is what it is. I mean, seriously, this is the guy who did The Hard Day's Night. I mean, he did the old Beatles movies and not a lot else. Why they would go to this guy as their go-to guy to take over Superman, I don't understand it. And again, I shouldn't rip him because he's doing nothing more than coming in with his particular bag of tricks and applying it to what he's been hired to do. But what a colossal, stupid move to that's your director. That's who you look for when you think of Superman. I don't get that. I do not understand it. And again, you watch that opening in this film, and that's all you need to know about this director and what he wants to do. This movie is a slapstick comedy farce, and like I said, I don't know who in their right mind would hear Superman and think Richard Lester. So I have to throw it at his feet. Sorry.
And I can't blame you. That's definitely something I would have absolutely changed. And I'm going to have to agree with you. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. I lay the golden fiddle on the ground of Richard Lester's feet. This is his fault.
He is the Joel Schumacher of the Superman franchise.
100%. Absolutely. but you know what? Schumacher, at least, he had like a rationale behind what he was doing. I really feel like he had a better rationale behind it. I'm saying I still think both of them are knucking futz, but I feel like at least with Schumacher, he was like almost unapologetic about, well, I'm just doing it this way. Until like people started saying, dude, this sucks, and he's like, okay, well, I apologize. I don't think Richard Lester ever apologized for this movie.
Yeah. Again, this was the early days. This was not the days of the internet. This was not the days of fan rage. You know, when you butcher their beloved franchises. We just kind of went to the movies, took our lumps, and went home. You know, yeah, so yeah, it just is what it is.
I had a lot of problems with this movie. I had a lot of problems with this movie that I would have wanted to change. I would have liked if Lana Lang had been better done. The super acid is probably the dumbest idea I've ever heard before. Gus suddenly wanting to kill Superman to suddenly not wanting to kill Superman. These are all things. But yeah, all of those together equals Richard Lester. So you just throw it at that man's feet and take it out with the rest of the trash.
Yeah, there you go.
And now for the harder part. Joe, for your consideration.
Yeah. You know what? It wasn't really that hard for me because honestly, like I said, there are nuggets in here that I wish they explored further. My runner-up was Evil Superman. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like, you know, that kind of got your attention. That, like, again, not so much the Evil Superman, but once they kind of went into the battle between good and evil, you know, which I guess plays out in the mind of Superman, but plays out on screen for us. You know, it was pretty well done, and it was, again, it was one of those things when you're younger and you're watching that. I mean, again, not perfect, and there was sort of a weirdness to it because, again, it was like they gave Superman all his powers, but they gave Clark Kent some of his powers. Like the line when he says, "You always wanted to fly, Kent. Now's your chance." Well, so he can't. Anyway, it was, you know, not perfect, but it was interesting, and they were exploring something there that, you know, was worthwhile. However, my for your consideration has to be the romance and the chemistry between Lana Lang and Clark Kent, which I think is easily the best part of the film and the most fun and charming to watch. And again, I wish they focused more on that instead of it. It felt like every time you're with the two of them, you'd sort of cut over to Richard Pryor doing something else sticky and weird and not funny. So yeah, that's mine. I enjoyed that very much. I thought the casting of Annette O'Toole was pretty spot on, and I thought the chemistry was very charming.
Yeah. All right, I can absolutely. You know what? Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Me personally, I actually did stick with. I thought that the junkyard fight. I love that. I really, really love that. I had such a great time watching that. I was saying to myself, I am watching the first ever Superman versus Bizarro fight, and I like it.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally agree with that. That you're absolutely. I like your idea that this was meant to be Bizarro, and in that respect, it kind of works.
Yep. So yeah, no, that was my favorite scene in the entire movie, which isn't saying a hell of a lot for the rest of this movie, but there it is.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it. I was very pleased and satisfied with it, and I was almost sad to see, quote unquote, a Bizarro Superman go in such a kind of a cheesy way. Oh no, I'm strangling him, and now, but but the rest of that, I just had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, and the way they reward you at the end with the finally get the big bombastic Superman theme again, terrific, very good.
But speaking of bombastic,
or just bombs in general.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, next week is going to be harder, maybe easier, hard to say, as we continue the Superman. What would you call this?
the runaway train downhill.
Yeah, the runaway train downhill.
Or headed to the cliff.
Superman movies. Yep, where we will discuss the final Christopher Reeve Superman movie. The one that was personal to him, the one that he helped write the story on. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Can't wait to dive into that beauty. Can't wait to dig that one out and watch it on the big screen again. Or the small screen.
Oh yeah. This is, ladies and gentlemen, if I describe this movie as Joe's Batman Forever, next week we'll be doing Joe's Batman and Robin.
Boy, I'll tell you what, you put this against Batman and Robin and suddenly Batman and Robin is looking a little bit better.
Oh, I don't know about that, sir. We'll get more into that next week.
We'll discuss.
Indeed. So until next time, thank you, sir. Happy Halloween.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again for hosting, and I will see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
You know, Superman had a movie serial as far back as 1948, but the actor playing him had his share of super problems.
Help! Help me, Superman! Help!
This looks like a job for Superman.
So do we keep going? Yeah? Okay. Even Superman can't outrun, a bullet. Oh, my face! You hit me in the eye! Why would you do that?
You're saved. Up, and away!
His lawyers called it heat exhaustion.